Welcome to Be Inquisitive, Exploring Disabilities. This is our third episode, and we're so glad you are joining us today. We're in, and you're in for a fabulous treat. I'm Ann Robinson, one of the co-hosts, and I'm here today with my son, George Robinson. You know it's a mother and son project. Hi, George.
Hi.
Ready?
Yes.
Everything's all set?
Yes, it is.
Yes, and who are we seeing today?
We're seeing a lady named Mrs. Cowden.
Yes, she was your nephew, my grandson's 8th grade teacher.
Yes.
Oh, and she a fabulous person. She knows so much about disabilities.
Yeah, she has so much experience.
Oh, she does. Oh, she absolutely does. And you know, she can talk about many kinds of disabilities out there. She can talk about their physical disabilities, and there are learning disabilities, and there's blindness, and there's deafness, and there are 9 or 10 forms of disabilities. And today, I think she's going to be talking more about learning disabilities and literature. I am so happy she's here. George, you studied disabilities, right?
Yes, I study speech and hearing disorders.
Yes. And for me?
And what did you study?
Well, I studied psychology in undergraduate school, but when I went to graduate school, do you know what my master's thesis was about?
No.
Deafness, disabilities. I've been interested in this field for a long time. So glad to be here at Babar Tree Studio.
Yes.
This wonderful tree studio where we work with the Reverend Kev and Brendan, the cameraman, and you, and we're going to have a good time today. Come on, sit back, relax, have your cup of tea if you like, and just join us as we explore disabilities. Thanks for being with us. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Ann.
Oh, Mrs. Cowden, I'm so happy that you're here. You know, what shall I call you? Shall I call you?
Linda.
Linda
yes.
Cowden.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yes, you know, I've seen you a lot over at the school, but I think this is going to be our first conversation.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it, right?
I knew that we'd definitely be inquisitive, definitely wanted to talk to you because there's so many people out in our audience who want to know more about disabilities and more about how to learn about disabilities and more about what should you read or what should we say to our children. And so tell us first about who you are, a little bit about yourself, and then a little bit about your experiences with disabilities.
Well, thank you, Ann, for inviting me to have this conversation because I think it's an important issue right now.
Yes.
I'm Linda Cowden, and I grew up in the Westville area of New Haven.
Mm-hmm.
I attended Benton School, Sheridan, and Hill House.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went on to graduate from Southern Connecticut State College. It was college in those days. Now it's the university.
Yes.
And it was a wonderful upbringing. And it was during this time that I was introduced to disabilities in some way.
Oh, yes. And so you're really a Connecticut person.
I am a Connecticut person and have lived in Westville my whole life. I'm still there. And right now I'm teaching at a parochial school. I have been. I retired, I shouldn't say.
Well, did you always teach at parochial schools?
Yes.
I know we are going a little bit fast, but I was always curious about that.
No, I started actually in Orange. I taught in Orange my first year. Mm-hmm. Then I stayed home, raised my children, and then I went on to teach in a Catholic school for 45 years. And
Congratulations.
Well, thank
That's
you.
Wonderful.
It was a wonderful experience, and I continue to, hopefully, will continue to do some intervention with students now that I'm free.
Well, I'm coming right back to Catholic school. You are a star. Everyone says, Mrs. Cowden is such a good teacher, and So everyone loves you, and I heard the announcement when you were going to retire, and the whole audience, the whole auditorium was packed. And they were saying, "Rah, rah, Miss Cowden." Yes.
Well, you
yes.
know, I think if you do something that you have a passion for, that you love, it's not like a job. It's something you look forward to every day. If you don't love your job, then, you know, I really feel sorry for people that have to struggle just to make ends
Yes,
meet and
yes.
don't enjoy what they're doing.
Yes.
And I was very fortunate. I also worked in camps when I was young, and I worked in the library. So I really always had contact with children in some way.
Yes. Now, I rushed us forward. Before we got a chance to even talk about disabilities and your experiences with them, I took it from the conversation we had that you'd had some experiences with disabilities.
Well, I really personally, when I was young, and actually in middle school and high school, I tried out for all the teams, the cheerleading and the basketball, and I just, every time I tried out, I came home and complained of my back bothered me. And so my mother decided that I probably should try out for something else. I wasn't athletic, so I went into some of the academic clubs and enjoyed it.
Yes.
But recently, I discovered that I had scoliosis, and only because now I have a back problem, which of course is being dealt with therapy and so forth. But you live with it, and sometimes it surfaces and sometimes it doesn't. Now that's very minor when it comes to disabilities, but it was
no
the beginning.
disabilities,
It was the
yes.
beginning.
Yes.
And I also grew up in a neighborhood that had children, a few children with disabilities, and one was a young boy whose father was a pianist. And this boy would walk on the porch back and forth and to the piano. And when it rained, he'd stay in and he'd walk. And other than that, you never saw him out.
Oh.
And that's in the day when people with disabilities were isolated from the
Yes.
population.
Yes.
The only time he, he was able to feel comfortable was with the piano, and his mother and father didn't have a car. So, that was one experience when I was young, and how it's changed over the years.
Oh my goodness, for the better.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, people are just, you feel so much better about yourself and who you are and the kinds of challenges you have. Now, you didn't know you had a disability.
No, because when I went to the doctor, they didn't take x-rays, too often. They certainly didn't have CAT scans and MRIs. And it wasn't anything that I was in such pain, because once I didn't do those things, I felt better.
Yes.
And
yes.
so, you didn't look for that. Today, they look for everything.
Yes,
And they
of
certainly
course.
would find it today because of that very reason. They have a medical field that is,
And so someone told you
So
recently that
so
that's what
recently,
was-
when I had X-rays, they said, "Do you know you have scoliosis?" I said, "Oh my glory, no!" And then they showed me the curve down my back, and I said, "Oh!" And of course, that's now causing difficulties. Now, whether or not they would have been able, other than major surgery, to correct it, probably not.
Well, a brace.
brace, they
the
would put
body
that
brace,
on,
yes,
yeah.
because I'm familiar with scoliosis.
Yeah.
So
But that's
the body brace, the rear,
Yeah,
for
and
a while, yes.
and it might have helped, but we have to take what we have and move on,
yes.
and but keep it in mind. So I know if my grandchildren complained, I'd make sure that they checked on it sooner
Yes.
rather
Do you have
than
any
later.
idea, have you read anything about what causes it?
No, I just assumed it was just a birth defect that in your body that
Yes.
I don't really know.
Well, I guess
because I assume you must be, I don't know if you're born with it or
we're
no.
not medical people, but I would suggest, wouldn't you think that if there is some concern about some kind of curvature or something, that the person would certainly seek out the school nurse, right?
Yeah.
And the school nurse, or go to your family physician.
Well, today they do. But
Yes.
you see, then, I guess I didn't make a big deal. I probably said my back hurts. Well, when you're doing exercises and trying to try out for some of these teams, your back is going to hurt anyway.
Yes,
So
yes,
I'm
yes,
sure that,
yes,
you know,
yes.
because, we had the best doctors you could have, but they didn't rush you off into.
Oh, no, times have really
no,
changed.
they've really
They
changed
have.
in the medical field.
And this year we are celebrating the, I think, 25th anniversary of the American Disabilities Act. So for at least 25 years or more, there's been more awareness of disabilities
Yes.
and more help in so many ways.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about looking back, what would you, from when you think about your childhood and high school days and growing up, and what would you change and what would you kind of keep the same? Because we're talking about the good old days.
Yeah.
What kind of things would you have changed?
Well, you're talking in regard to disabilities.
Yeah,
Yes.
disabilities as well as the experience. of
Yeah,
growing
well, I
up.
think that education and awareness and conversations about it. It was isolated. I mean, you didn't talk about it, and that was the unfortunate thing. And no one really. And then, of course, when they couldn't be treated, or they couldn't stay at home, they put them into a facility, such as, I know one of them was Southbury, and different places where they were cared for, but they didn't have the opportunity to have an upbringing in their home. And I believe that being in your home is so much better if it's possible. And of course, that's back in the 1990s, I guess, when first mainstreaming and then inclusion began in the education.
And you were in the education.
And
by
I was
then.
there because, I'll tell you, when I started teaching, you never had a disabled child in the class.
No.
Because they just weren't sent to a public school.
No.
They were sent to either a private school, or they were sent, or they were
Or special.
or they were treated at home, and taught the best the parents could do.
Yes.
Because, but now, I mean, they have advocates for everything. I know I have a disabled granddaughter, and I mean, my daughter-in-law just calls for her advocate, and they work with her so well, and so I think that it's just.
So what, the advocate, would you tell me about that?
Yeah, the advocate is the person who stands for what you want, for what you're after, and goes to bat for you, so to speak.
Oh, good.
And so if she's not happy with the program that Christine's in, then she makes sure that she has someone speaking for her. She calls, and you have to be a parent that's aggressive, outgoing, and wants the help. And they're there for you.
Right.
And the funds are there, money is there. And so all of these things.
So how'd you find out about the advocate?
Well, once Christina was labeled, so-called, and then they talk to you. They talk to you about everything that's available. And the state provides you with all kinds of information and programs. They also provide you with support groups in your town.
For the child as well as the parents?
Not so much for the child, although they tell them about programs. But there's a long way to go. Because, of course, when funding gets cut, that's where it gets cut, unfortunately.
So if you have a challenge in school, you just go with the parent advocate. Well,
no, this isn't an advocate from the school. This is an advocate from the state.
Oh, yes.
Yes, no, it's not an advocate from the school.
Okay.
It's, I think, we're the advocates, in the school, and I think, that's. But I think you have to really know that there are people out there that want
to help. We have. Of course, I just could keep on talking because I want to learn so much more. But right now, we're going to sign off for a few moments.
Okay.
We'll be back. We will certainly be back to talk more with Mrs. Cowden. Aren't you having a good time? I am. I'm enjoying. I'm learning. It's so good. Thank you. And now let's take our break.
Thanks, Ann.
We're back again. Yes, in the same day. Welcome. Please join us once more. Have you been having a good time? I have. I mean, I could keep talking to Mrs. Cowden for hours and hours. Now, but we're not going to be here another hour, so don't worry. If you've got to get to work or something else to do, continue to join us here. Ms. Cowden, you taught at a Catholic school?
Yes, I taught, after I went back to school, I taught at St. Aidan's, St. Brennan School, and I started in 5th grade and then moved up the ranks until I got to the middle school. And although I loved all the grades, I really had a feeling that the 7th and 8th was a match for me. So I stayed there until I left last year.
And they make a transition from...
Then from our school, they go on to a high school of choice, and many of them have gone on to wonderful schools. In addition to the public schools, New Haven, which they have some wonderful schools. They also went on to Notre Dame High School.
Yes. That's a Catholic school.
That's a Catholic school.
Yes. For boys, I think.
This is for boys.
Yes.
And then...
Let me ask you one question.
Sure.
Is it all boys?
Our Notre Dame in West Haven is all boys. There is a Notre Dame in the Fairfield County, I believe, and that is co-ed. But the one that we transitioned to is all boys. And Sacred Heart Academy, which is all girls, and that's in Hamden. And then they also, some of them in the past have gone on to Hopkins and to Cheshire Academy. So we have a varied school choice for them. And they take tests and they make their decisions, and then they come back and they share their stories.
That you really get them ready.
Well, I
have
so.
heard that's your reputation. It's a great reputation. But I've heard you. Is it true that one of your students you were so good and so helpful? He wrote a book.
Yes.
She wrote a book?
He wrote a book. He wrote a book. He started it actually in 6th grade. He was not with me at that time. And then he continued on in 7th and 8th when he came to my classes. However, I really wasn't instrumental. Excuse me. I wasn't instrumental in. Well, I didn't think I was instrumental in the writing until the end when they asked me to edit the book.
Oh.
And so I did get some credits in the beginning, so I felt like I was, in the picture. And the name of the book was The True Confessions of a Catholic School Bully. And the story is...
The True Confessions of a Catholic School Bully.
Yes. And it's quite interesting. And it's done with graphic art. And it is written about a boy who left the public system because he didn't behave and went on to the Catholic school system. And in a
Now, that's a disability, When you get that kind of behavior, that's a disability. I know because I'm a clinical psychologist by training, yes. So there are those psychological disabilities, yes.
When I looked back over the book, I picked the book up and I thought, well, this does fit the topic because he, in one way, was picked on. Therefore, he became a bully, realized when he got to the Catholic school that that wasn't the way to go. And then the humorous part is that he went to confession and told every little thing he ever did. And it shows with the graphic art, the priest falling asleep in the confessional, So there's a little humor in it. There's a little reality in it. And it was an excellent book, and the children love reading it, all grades from 5th grade up.
Who wrote it?
This is Roy Smith.
Roy, R-O-Y, Smith, S-M-I-T-H.
Yeah, and he went on to...
and the graphic artist, I always put a plug in because, my grandson, RJ, is an artist, yes.
Well, the graphic artist, he was not the artist, but I'm not sure who the artist was. And then he... when they asked me to edit the book, that's right up my alley. I love doing editing. So I did do the editing. And so he made a success. And so we also had had a grant given to us. And the girl that did the grant also did one in Woodbridge. And she brought a girl from Woodbridge, from Amity, who wrote a book. And so we celebrated the 2 books. And they signed them.
Yes.
And they gave a copy to each school, and so it was nice.
Yes, very nice.
Opens the door, right.
Fantastic. When we think about books and writing about one's experiences with disabilities, of course, when I grew up, we knew Helen Keller. I mean, she was our hero, heroine, however you want to call it. We loved Helen Keller. Was it like that when you were growing up?
Well, you know, I look back and I think we do have the story of Helen Keller in our 7th grade literature book, a very, you know, abbreviated. And I remember growing up and reading about Helen Keller when I was young. But I read about Helen Keller when she couldn't hear and couldn't see, and how she learned. But that was it. Helen Keller was kind of dropped, and then new and different, more modern stories came about. So when I looked it over and realized, or refreshed my mind, that she went on, you know, to Harvard, was educated, and she said one thing in one of her presentations that I thought was, you know, rather interesting, because she said, alone we can do some things, but together we can do so many more.
Ah, true.
And you know, it can be for anything, but especially dealing with disabled people.
Yes.
And so she was, I thought, you know, very profound in her thinking, and always was thinking about people that were like she was.
Yes.
And so that was my take on, you know, Helen Keller.
Yes. Are there any other books or books and things I call that you'd like to call to our attention?
Well, I looked over, I know we have several stories in our literature books that deal with the disabilities, but there's one author out there right now, and it's R.J. Palacio.
R.J.
Palacio, P-A-L-A-C-E-O. And she wrote the book Wonder. Now, I don't know if you've heard of it,
No, I
but
haven't.
my granddaughter took it from the library, and she said, Graham, I read a wonderful book. This was after you asked me to speak.
Yes.
And then she went on, so I got it, and I read excerpts from it. And it's all about this boy, Augie, who is very, very, very severely deformed face. And he was homeschooled. And then when they sent him back to school, of course, he was just a target for all kinds of, you know, verbal abuse. And they called him the freak, and they just brutalized him. But he did have a friend, and he had an enemy, or a villain. And when he was in trouble, the friend came to his defense, and so did everybody else. And in the end, they all came together, and they realized the importance. And she just wrote another one, Augie and Me. And I think every child should probably read this book, because, you know, there's such a thing as being a friend, being friendly, or being a friend. And I think with disabled children, so many young people are friendly to them.
Yes.
But they haven't gone over the bridge to be the friend. And I think that's what we need to work more on.
What an interesting concept.
You know,
yes,
I
a
think
wonderful concept.
I think
yes.
we're going there. We're heading
Yes,
there.
yes.
And I think with programs like Best Buddies and Special Olympics and ways that they're out in the public view and people see that they're human beings.
Absolutely.
And whether they're physically impaired or mentally impaired, you know, they have something, they have feelings.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And there are physical disabilities and there are medical disabilities.
Well,
and
and
there's just so many different
And they're not all
types of
born with them. They develop them
That's
through
right.
life,
some
unfortunately.
Some are congenital and
Yeah.
some are adventitious.
Yeah.
Some you're born with, some afterwards. Yes,
Yeah.
it's so true. And now when you want to get more information, where do you go?
You go to the library.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. I love libraries.
I spend more time in the library, and they love me because the circulation goes up because I'm always taking books. And as a matter of
Yes.
fact, the other day I took a cute book out. It was called My Brother Dustin, and it was about a Down syndrome boy who was having a new baby sister come into the home, and
Yes.
how he was feeding her and everything. And so I took that home just to read it and inspire me.
Oh, yes.
But I think
all age groups.
all age, and
So it doesn't matter. And then I put a plug in for my best friend. She was the matron of honor in my wedding, and I was the maid of honor in her wedding. Her name is Benny Tate Wilkin, W-I-L-K-I-N. and she writes about survival themes in children's literature, and she
Oh.
writes about bestsellers and so on. She's like you.
Oh.
Bright, brilliant women.
Well,
Oh, yes, and love libraries.
Yep.
I guess you call the information processors or...
there's so much there, and the librarians are so helpful.
Can be your
and they
best
can
friend.
assist you. There's computers to look up any topic you want
computers
and direct you to the books and the section in the
Yes.
library.
Yes,
And
yes.
I just think that we can't say enough. I know that everything is computer, but it's not the same as the library.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
know.
I know it might be
Old-fashioned
age,
people,
but I
yeah.
really believe that you need to go to the library and have a feeling for books
Yes.
and meet people and maybe talk about some of these topics as you're standing around. I'm looking for a book
Absolutely.
on disabilities, and then the person
Yes.
very likely might say, oh, you know, I have something to do with that. And you never know where you're going to run into people and when you're talking and opening up.
Mrs. Cowden, it's just been a joy speaking with you today. We've learned so much. The conversation is just starting. We need to keep going.
Right.
Hello out there. Isn't she fabulous? Isn't it wonderful? Oh, and she's going to get you to a library very soon, and I am too. And so thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for being being
you.
inquisitive.
And I'd like to leave just one message
Yeah.
that I think that we need to have the conversation and be compassionate. And as this author, R.J. Palacio, assigned a day called Choose Kind. And
Called what?
Choose Kind.
Choose
Kind.
kind.
And it was supported by President Obama. And it's choose, I believe, being kind to somebody every day. And, you know,
Yes.
so I think those three words kind of tie up what we've been talking about today.
Yes. Those three words are,
Our conversation,
yes,
compassion,
compassion,
and to choose kind.
and to choose kindness. Compassion,
Conversation,
conversation, and
and
choose
choose
kindness.
kindness.
Did you get it out there? Please be compassionate, have a conversation, and choose kindness. Thank you so much for being with us at Be Inquisitive as we explore disabilities. And Mrs. Cowden, Mrs. Linda Cowden, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, it was
we
my
want you to come
pleasure.
back too.
I'd love to. At another time, I'd be
Great.
happy to.
Oh,
Thank you.
that's fabulous. That's wonderful. Signing off now for Be Inquisitive. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Oh, George, wasn't that great?
Very inspirational.
Oh, Mrs. Cowden was excellent.
Yes.
And you know, everybody has a part to play. Son George and Brendan, and of course our executive director, Reverend Kev, Ms. Cowden, me. And this is, what is your part? You have a part to play. Yes, you do out there. We are announcing today your part is to have a quiet call to action. And Mrs. Cowden left us with a great idea, 3 C's, things that you can do. You can have conversations as you explore disabilities. And please be compassionate as you think about disabilities. And every day of the week, choose kindness. Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing about your quiet call to action. Signing off now for Be Inquisitive. Have a great 3 C's.